December 25th, 2017, Christmas Day, Doncaster. A morning meant for warmth and celebration sat under a cold winter sky. Streets were quiet, homes filled with decorations, and families gathered to share food and laughter. But inside a suburban house in Balby, Christmas would become a nightmare waiting to break. Behind closed doors, what should have been a day of peace turned into unimaginable violence. A 72-year-old man spending Christmas with family, a granddaughter under the same roof, and one sudden, uncontrollable eruption that would end a life in the most brutal way. Lindsay Fletcher, once seen as an ordinary woman within a familiar family setting, now stood accused of a crime born from rage and chaos. How could a day symbolizing love and togetherness descend into such savage destruction? This was not an accident. This was not confusion brought on by the moment. This was a frenzied, relentless attack. One that left a family shattered and a home forever stained by what happened that morning. Inside South Yorkshire's most disturbing female offenders, this case stands apart, not just for its brutality, but for the day on which it unfolded. Welcome to True Crime with Tyler, where South Yorkshire streets whisper secrets and the darkest crimes hide behind the most ordinary doors. Today, we uncover the chilling true story of Lindsay Fletcher, a Christmas Day murder that turned celebration into horror, and a sentence that echoed far beyond Doncaster. What you're about to hear may never leave your mind. Lindsay Fletcher, 29 years old, on Christmas Day 2017, in the normally quiet town of Doncaster, what should have been a peaceful day of family gatherings, transformed into one of South Yorkshire's most shocking acts of violence. Behind the doors of a modest flat, years of hidden resentment finally erupted into unimaginable brutality. Lindsay Fletcher, 39 years old, was a mother struggling with addictions to crack cocaine and heroin. She lived on St. James Street, drifting between friends' homes and the city's drug dens, her life consumed by disorder and chaos. That winter, she moved in with her 72-year-old step-grandfather, Michael Eaton, a retired delivery driver who had taken her in out of pity. Yet beneath her apparent dependence lay deep-seated bitterness and greed. Prosecutors would later describe Fletcher as harboring hatred toward Eaton, seeing him as an easy source of money. On Christmas Day, during the course of the evening, Fletcher unleashed a vicious attack on the elderly man in his own home. Armed with a steak knife, she stabbed him more than 120 times, 30 blows to the back of his head, and 90 more across his body and neck. When the knife dulled, she used his own walking stick to continue the assault. The flat became a horrifying scene of blood and violence. Afterwards, she stripped the body, doused it in bleach to erase evidence, leaving the man who had once cared for her lying lifeless on the floor. The following day, as families across Britain unwrapped their presents, police were called to Mr. Eaton's home in Balby. His body was discovered surrounded by blood and the acrid smell of chemicals. Investigators soon uncovered the full extent of Fletcher's actions. Not only had she committed murder, but she had also coerced her 12-year-old daughter into helping dispose of the evidence. Together, they carried his blood-stained clothes to a nearby patch of waste ground and the River Dawn. Divers later retrieved the jumper, but the weapon used in the killing was never recovered. During her trial at Sheffield Crown Court, Fletcher claimed she acted in self-defense after her step-grandfather allegedly tried to assault her, citing past abuse in her childhood. Prosecutors dismantled this defense, highlighting her online searches for poisoning, methods and witnesses who recalled her speaking about wanting Eaton dead. After just 4 days, the jury found her guilty of murder. The judge described the killing as cold-blooded and ferocious, sentencing her to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 13 years. The case sent shockwaves across the nation. Reporters called it a senseless tragedy, born from a combination of hatred and addiction. It sparked renewed conversations about the role of drugs in violent crime and the generational trauma that often remains hidden. From this horror, harsh truths emerged, Addiction can destroy faster than forgiveness can repair. Unspoken abuse can fester into explosive rage. And involving a child in a crime destroys not just one life, but two. Violence does not start with a weapon. It begins where empathy ends. Lindsay Fletcher's story revealed that family ties do not always guarantee loyalty, and that long-buried hatred can smolder quietly for years before erupting. Yet even that Christmas Day murder was not the final time love would turn lethal in South Yorkshire. If you enjoy learning about the hidden truths of crime stories, consider hitting that like button and subscribing for more content like this. And please comment below to let me know where you're listening from. On the morning of 25 December 2017, at approximately 09:40 a.m., the quiet street of Mayfield Crescent in Worsborough, Barnsley, England, became the scene of a shocking investigation that would capture public attention during the holiday season. What should have been a day of festive celebration and family gatherings instead became the backdrop for suspicion, uncertainty, and a community in shock. A 27-year-old woman was arrested on suspicion of murder after the body of 30-year-old Stuart Tollan was discovered. An event that sent ripples through the town and ignited intense scrutiny. To neighbors and local residents, the morning began like any other. The streets, usually peaceful during Christmas, were quiet. The cold winter air carrying the stillness typical of early December in South Yorkshire. But that calm was shattered when emergency services arrived at the scene, responding to reports that would later reveal a death under suspicious circumstances. The discovery of Stuart Tollan's body immediately raised questions, concerns, and a sense of unease among those who had known him and the local community. Authorities acted swiftly. Police cordoned off the area, initiating an investigation that would dominate headlines in Barnsley and beyond. The 27-year-old woman, linked to the case through initial evidence and witness accounts, was taken into custody on suspicion of murder. While the full circumstances remained unclear to the public, the arrest marked a tense and dramatic escalation, highlighting how quickly ordinary life can be disrupted by tragedy. The arrest, coming on Christmas Day, added a layer of poignancy and disbelief, as a time traditionally associated with family and joy became intertwined with fear and uncertainty. Investigators worked meticulously, examining the scene, interviewing neighbors, and piecing together timelines. Every detail mattered: the movements of those involved, the timing of events, and the context surrounding the day. The community watched closely as authorities tried to make sense of what had occurred. The case, while initially high-profile due to the arrest, soon revealed complexities that required careful evaluation, and the police emphasized the need for thoroughness before conclusions could be drawn. Within days, the 27-year-old woman was released under investigation, a decision reflecting the complexities and ongoing nature of the inquiry. While no charges were ultimately brought at that time, the case remained a stark reminder of how quickly lives can be upended and how initial appearances can lead to intense public speculation. The arrest and subsequent release fueled discussions on social media, local news outlets, and among neighbors, raising questions about justice, suspicion, and the impact of legal procedures on those involved. The Barnsley Christmas Day case serves as a reminder that tragedy and uncertainty can strike at any time. Even on a day traditionally associated with peace and celebration, it highlights the challenges faced by law enforcement in balancing swift action with careful investigation and the emotional toll on communities and individuals caught in the middle. Though the woman was ultimately released, the events of that December morning remain etched in local memory, a story of shock, suspense, and the fragility of everyday life. Even years later, the Barnsley Christmas Day case continues to be revisited in local crime discussions and online documentaries, reflecting the enduring impact of a single day when normalcy was shattered in an instant. Katherine, 45 years old. On the night of 29th of February 2000, In the quiet streets of Aberdeen, New South Wales, what should have been a normal evening transformed into one of the most horrifying chapters in criminal history. Behind the facade of an ordinary life lay a woman whose capacity for violence would shock the world. Katherine Knight, already known in local circles for her volatile temper, would go on to commit acts so brutal that they earned her a place among the most disturbing female offenders ever recorded. Knight's life had been marked by turbulence long before that fateful night. Friends and family recalled a woman who could switch from charm to rage in an instant, a personality shaped by years of unresolved trauma and simmering resentment. Those close to her described moments of extreme possessiveness, controlling behavior, and bursts of aggression that hinted at the darkness lurking beneath her surface. Yet no one could have predicted the magnitude of horror she would unleash that February evening. That night, the events that unfolded in her home revealed a level of brutality that seemed almost unimaginable. Reports later detailed that Knight's anger escalated to a terrifying climax, a storm of violence directed at the person closest to her at that moment. Every action, every decision reflected a deep-seated rage that had been building for years. Witnesses and investigators would describe the crime scene as nightmarish, a place where normalcy had been obliterated by sheer ferocity. Authorities later pieced together the chilling narrative. Knight's crime was not impulsive. It carried the hallmarks of careful planning combined with uncontrolled rage. The act left the local community in shock and disbelief, forcing them to confront the terrifying reality that a woman could commit acts of violence so extreme. Media outlets across Australia and internationally would later highlight her in December horror crime features, cementing her notoriety in the public imagination. Psychologists and criminologists examining Knight's behavior noted a combination of factors that contributed to the extremity of her actions. A history of abusive relationships, psychological instability, and unresolved trauma all played a role in shaping a person capable of such devastating acts. Her story became a grim illustration of how unresolved anger, when combined with opportunity, can culminate in catastrophic violence. Katherine Knight's case continues to serve as a haunting reminder of the unpredictable nature of human behavior. It forces reflection on the dark corners of the mind, the consequences of unchecked rage, and the ways in which domestic settings can become arenas for unimaginable horror. Her name remains synonymous with a level of female violence rarely seen, a grim benchmark against which other crimes are often measured. From this story emerges a lesson as chilling as it is clear. Violence is not bound by gender, age, or expectation. The line between normalcy and monstrosity can be frighteningly thin. Katherine Knight proved that sometimes the most terrifying acts of human behavior can emerge from within the walls of a home, in the quiet of the night, leaving a legacy that continues to haunt both those who study it and those who remember it. Sharon Carr, 15 years old. On an evening in December 1992, in the quiet countryside of Cambridgeshire, England, what should have been an ordinary teenage life instead became one of the most shocking chapters in Britain's criminal history. Behind the unassuming face of a young girl, a darkness had already begun to fester, a darkness that would soon erupt into acts that the nation would struggle to comprehend. Sharon Carr, at just 15, would become Britain's youngest female serial killer, a title that shocked investigators, families and communities alike. From an early age, Carr's life had been marked by turbulence and instability. Her formative years, shaped by neglect and fractured family ties, created fertile ground for resentment and aggression to grow. By the time she reached adolescence, she had already committed an act that would horrify anyone who knew her. She had taken the life of her own mother. This first act of violence was not a moment of unplanned rage, but rather a glimpse into the calculated, disturbing nature of her impulses. That December evening, The quiet streets of Cambridgeshire bore witness to the hidden depths of Carr's psyche. Investigators later described her as unnervingly composed, even when recounting her actions. She moved through her life with a calmness that belied the storm of violence simmering within her, in a world where 15-year-olds are expected to navigate school, friendships, and the awkwardness of adolescence. Sharon Carr had already crossed into a territory most adults could scarcely imagine. As the investigation unfolded, police discovered the broader scope of her crimes. Each confession added layers of horror, revealing a pattern of deliberate and methodical violence. Families and neighbors struggled to reconcile the image of a teenage girl with the cold precision of her actions. Witnesses recalled her discussing dark fantasies, her words hinting at intentions far beyond typical youthful rebellion. Every detail painted a picture of a child whose innocence had long been replaced by something far more sinister. Sharon Carr's story raised urgent questions about childhood, trauma, and the unseen forces that can shape a young mind. How could someone so young commit acts so horrific? What experiences had driven her to sever the very bonds that were meant to nurture and protect her? And perhaps most chillingly, how long had this darkness been growing in secret, hidden behind the mask of normalcy? From this tragedy emerged lessons that were as unsettling as they were important. Childhood neglect and unresolved trauma can fester into unimaginable consequences, and evil does not always announce itself with age or appearance. Carr's case became a chilling reminder that violence, even in its most calculated form, can emerge from the most unexpected sources. For Britain, Sharon Carr's name would forever remain synonymous with a terrifying reality that innocence is fragile, and sometimes the most shocking evil can come from the youngest among us. Maxine Carr, 25 years old, in December 2002, in the quiet town of Soham, Cambridgeshire, what should have been a normal, uneventful period instead became a focus of national outrage. Behind the facade of an ordinary life lay a woman whose actions would make her one of the most reviled figures in modern British criminal history. Maxine Carr, though not directly responsible for the murders themselves, became infamous for the role she played in providing a false alibi, a decision that would see her condemned in the court of public opinion and convicted in the eyes of the law. Carr's early life had given little hint of the notoriety she would acquire. Friends and neighbors described her as quiet, seemingly ordinary, someone who blended into the routines of small-town life. Yet beneath that surface lay choices that would have devastating consequences. When tragedy struck the community of Soham, the disappearance and subsequent murder of two young girls, the nation was gripped by grief, and investigators turned their attention toward anyone connected to the events. It was in this atmosphere of suspicion and heartbreak that Carr's actions would emerge, forever linking her name to one of the most infamous cases in UK history. During the investigation, authorities discovered that Carr had knowingly provided a false alibi for Ian Huntley, the man ultimately responsible for the murders. Though she had not committed the killings herself, her deception obstructed justice and delayed the course of law enforcement. The implications of her choices sent shockwaves across the country, as families and communities struggled to comprehend how a seemingly ordinary woman could play a part in such a devastating chain of events. As details unfolded in court, the narrative of Maxine Carr became a cautionary tale about loyalty, deceit, and moral compromise. Prosecutors portrayed her actions as a deliberate attempt to shield Huntley, emphasizing that her lies had real-world consequences, prolonging the agony of the victims' families and intensifying the media scrutiny that followed. Witnesses recounted moments of duplicity, times when Carr presented herself as cooperative and innocent, while concealing the truth that would later define her public persona. The trial at Cambridge Crown Court cemented her notoriety. Carr was convicted, not for the murders themselves, but for the grave offense of perverting the course of justice. The judge's statements highlighted the seriousness of her deception and the profound impact it had on the investigation. Media outlets across the UK labelled her one of the most hated women in the country, a sentiment that would persist for years, reinforced by documentaries, news reports, and countless discussions across social platforms. Maxine Carr's story serves as a stark reminder that complicity, even indirect, carries consequences that ripple far beyond the immediate moment. It illustrates how a single choice rooted in loyalty or fear can irrevocably alter a person's life and reputation. Her case forces reflection on the moral responsibilities we bear, the weight of truth, and the fragility of public trust. For many, Maxine Carr's name remains synonymous with deceit, the dark side of loyalty, and the enduring shock of a community forever changed by tragedy. Jane Andrews, 34 years old. On the evening of 3rd December 2000, in the affluent neighbourhood of Fulham, London, what should have been an ordinary night took a dark and shocking turn. Behind the polished image of a young woman who had once moved among the elite of British high society lay a story of obsession, jealousy, and ultimately murder. Jane Andrews, a former royal dresser, would see her life spiral from privilege to infamy in a way that captivated the nation and shocked those who had once admired her. Andrews' early life had been marked by ambition and opportunity. Working closely with the royal household, she moved in circles of influence and elegance, a life many envied. Yet beneath the surface of this glamorous exterior, a pattern of possessiveness, insecurity, and simmering anger was quietly taking root. Those who knew her described her as charismatic and intelligent, yet capable of intense emotional volatility, a duality that would later define the tragedy of that December evening. The events of 3rd December 2000 unfolded with chilling swiftness. In the privacy of her own apartment, Andrews' jealousy and rage reached a terrifying climax. Her victim, caught in the crossfire of her obsessive fixation and mounting resentment, became the target of violence that would leave an indelible mark on the London community. Details emerging from the investigation revealed that her actions were not impulsive alone, but also driven by deep emotional turmoil, creating a deadly combination of opportunity and premeditation. As the investigation progressed, detectives painted a portrait of a woman whose outward charm concealed a darker reality. Witnesses recounted moments where Andrews appeared calm, collected and composed, while beneath the surface, thoughts of revenge and destruction churned. Her ability to compartmentalize her public image from her private impulses added a chilling dimension to the case, leaving friends and colleagues struggling to reconcile the person they thought they knew with the criminal she had become. During the trial, the court heard of the meticulous planning and deliberate nature of Andrews' actions. Evidence highlighted her calculated approach, her ability to manipulate situations, and the intensity of her obsession, factors that ultimately led to her conviction. Media coverage was relentless, turning the case into one of the most notorious fall-from-grace stories in recent British history. Documentaries and news specials on YouTube and television repeatedly revisit the case, analyzing the psychology behind her descent and the shocking juxtaposition of her royal connections and criminal acts. Jane Andrews' story serves as a stark reminder of how ambition, envy, and obsession can intertwine to devastating effect. It underscores the fragility of public image, the hidden dangers of unchecked emotion, and the terrifying reality that violence can emerge from the most unexpected sources. From the heights of privilege to the depths of criminal infamy, her name remains etched in the annals of Britain's most gripping true crime cases. Even decades later, the story of Jane Andrews continues to captivate, horrify, and provoke reflection, proving that behind the veneer of sophistication and success, darkness can quietly thrive, waiting for the moment to erupt. Donna Anthony, in her 30s, in December 1996, in the quiet county of Hampshire, England, what should have been nights filled with family life instead became the focus of one of the most controversial child death investigations in British history. Behind the unassuming exterior of a mother appeared a life marked by both grief and suspicion, a life that would be forever defined by tragedy and legal scrutiny. Donna Anthony, at the center of this storm, would see her name repeatedly invoked in debates, documentaries, and discussions that captured public attention throughout December and beyond. Anthony's early life and family background had offered little foreshadowing of the controversy that would engulf her. Described by neighbors as a devoted mother, she lived quietly, raising her children with apparent care and attention. Yet the deaths of her two young children triggered an investigation that cast her in the harshest of lights. As police and prosecutors struggled to understand the circumstances surrounding their untimely passing, what had seemed like ordinary domestic life was now under intense scrutiny, and Anthony's every action, statement, and decision became a focal point of suspicion. During the investigation, authorities meticulously examined the evidence, seeking answers in a case filled with complexity and tragedy. The timing of the events, the patterns observed in the children's deaths, and the circumstances of their care all contributed to a narrative that ultimately placed Anthony at the heart of the legal proceedings. Police described the night hours as crucial to understanding what had occurred, while prosecutors pieced together evidence that would form the basis of a conviction, igniting debate among experts, the public, and the media. As the case unfolded, the courtroom became a stage for a legal drama that gripped the nation. Witnesses, experts, and investigators detailed every aspect of Anthony's behavior, scrutinizing her as both a mother and a defendant. The trial highlighted the difficult balance between grief, suspicion, and accountability, raising questions about the interpretation of evidence, the role of maternal instinct, and the fine line between tragedy and criminal responsibility. Anthony's actions, both during the events and in their aftermath, were dissected with relentless attention, each detail contributing to the broader narrative of a highly controversial conviction. The media coverage that followed painted a complex picture. Documentaries and news specials revisited the case repeatedly, examining Anthony's life, the deaths of her children, and the legal process that followed. December became synonymous with reflection on the case, as journalists, legal experts, and the public debated the fairness, accuracy, and implications of the verdict. The case also sparked wider conversations about child protection, the challenges of proving intent, and the consequences of controversial convictions in emotionally charged circumstances. Donna Anthony's story serves as a reminder of the fragility of life, the weight of suspicion, and the lasting impact of legal judgment. It illustrates how tragedy can intersect with controversy, leaving legacies